The forest of Talvareth breathed like a living thing, each tree pulsing with faint green light, their roots whispering through the moss as if sharing secrets of ancient wars long forgotten. The air shimmered with bioluminescent dust that drifted like falling stars, glowing softly on the bodies of the alien guards moving through the clearing. At the center of it all lay the boy, small, fragile by their standards, his human frame trembling as blood seeped from the wound on his arm. The bite mark glowed faintly where the beast's venom still worked its way through his veins. Around him, the alien warriors stood tense and uncertain, their armor dark and ornate, their eyes flickering with the unreadable stillness of soldiers trained to face death without question. But none of them had seen anything like this before. A child of another world who had thrown himself between a dying princess and the jaws of a forest beast that even their kind feared. She knelt beside him now, the alien princess, her crimson skin dimmed by exhaustion, her ornate armor cracked and smeared with her own blood. Her long braids spilled across her shoulders like ribbons of molten ruby, her crown askew. She pressed one glowing hand against the boy's chest, her other trembling as she whispered words in a tongue he didn't understand. The energy that flowed from her palm was warm, almost like sunlight, but it couldn't reach the corruption spreading beneath his skin. The poison of the Tereth beast was not just chemical. It was spiritual, bound to the wild essence of the planet itself. When her power faltered, she drew a sharp breath, her voice breaking. "He saved me," she said in her native tongue, her gaze rising to the towering figure standing behind her. "He shouldn't die for it." The alien chief stepped forward. He was massive, skin a shade of deep cobalt, armor forged from meteor iron, and eyes like molten silver. His face was carved in stern lines that spoke of decades of command and sacrifice. He looked down at the child, then at his wounded princess. His expression didn't change, but the air around him grew heavier, as if even the forest held its breath. "He carries the beast's mark," he said. "No healer can touch him now. The wild will claim his mind before dawn." "There must be something," she pleaded. "He's human, his body fights differently. You've seen it before." "I've seen it fail before," the chief replied coldly. But even as he said it, his gaze lingered longer than it should have. There was something in the boy's eyes, a flicker of defiance even through the pain, that stirred something ancient in him. The boy coughed weakly, his voice barely a whisper. "Is she safe?" The princess froze. His words were slurred, his pupils dilating as the poison spread, but he was still looking at her, concern etched across a face too young to have known war. She leaned closer, her hand hovering near his cheek. "Yes," she said softly, switching to his language with surprising precision. "Because of you." His eyes fluttered, a faint smile touching his lips before he winced in pain. "Good," he murmured. Then, "Worth it." The alien chief watched in silence, his soldiers shifting uneasily behind him. None dared speak. None dared question the tension hanging in the air. The forest rustled again, deeper this time. The beasts had sensed blood, drawn by the scent of magic and mortality. "We must leave," one of the guards said. The chief gave a curt nod, but the princess rose to her feet, stepping between them and the boy. "We don't leave him," she said. "He's dying," the chief replied. "Then he dies with us," she said sharply. Her tone carried royal authority, but beneath it, fear. "If the wild takes him, it takes him under my protection." "You would risk your life for this creature?" the chief asked, his voice low but laced with disbelief. He risked his for mine. For a long moment no one moved. The only sound was the pulse of distant thunder rumbling through the trees. Then, slowly, the chief knelt beside the boy. His massive hand rested just above the wound, not touching it, simply feeling the life fading beneath the skin. "He is strong," he said quietly. "Stronger than he should be." He looked up at the princess, his gaze hardening. "If he dies, the blame is yours. If he lives, the bond will be on your head." "Then I accept it," she said without hesitation. The chief's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. "So be it." He drew a blade from his belt, one carved from obsidian and engraved with ancient sigils that shimmered faintly under the forest light. The other warriors tensed. "Chief," one started, but he silenced them with a glance. The princess stepped back, watching as he pressed the flat of the blade against his forearm, slicing through his own skin without flinching. His blood, dark, thick, and faintly luminous, dripped onto the ground beside the boy. Then he turned the blade and cut into the earth, drawing a crude symbol that began to glow as his blood filled its grooves. "This is madness," one of the guards whispered. "This is life," the chief answered. He looked at the princess, then back at the boy. "If the wild has marked him, then let the wild choose." The air thickened. The ground pulsed once, twice, as the mark flared bright gold, then deep crimson. The boy gasped as the light crawled up his arm like fire, his body arching in pain. The princess fell to her knees beside him, gripping his hand despite the heat searing her skin. "Hold on," she whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. "Please hold on." The chief closed his eyes, chanting low, the words guttural and old. The forest around them responded, trees groaning, roots shifting, light weaving through the canopy like a storm of fireflies drawn to their plea. The beast's curse fought back, the glow turning violent, lashing out like sparks. One struck the princess's armor, burning through it, but she didn't move. She only held tighter. Then, with a sound like thunder breaking inside the earth, it was over. The light vanished, the air fell still, and the boy lay motionless on the moss. The princess's breath hitched as she leaned over him. For a terrible second, she thought she was too late, until his chest rose, slow but steady. The color was returning to his skin, the mark on his arm fading to nothing but a faint scar. She turned toward the chief, her voice trembling. "You saved him." The chief shook his head. "No," he said. "He saved himself." The next morning, the forest of Talvareth awoke under a strange silence. The mist that usually drifted between the roots had thinned, as if afraid to linger where the wild had tested a human and found him worthy. Birds with glassy wings glided above the canopy, calling to one another in soft, metallic tones, while beams of golden light pierced through the leaves and shimmered on the moss. The alien warriors kept their distance from the clearing where the boy lay sleeping. They spoke in low voices, glancing often toward him and then toward the princess who refused to leave his side. She knelt beside him, exhausted but unyielding, her crimson armor dulled by ash and blood. Her eyes, normally fierce and proud, were softer now, filled with something that unsettled her far more than fear. When the chief approached, the ground seemed to recognize his weight. His armor caught the early light, and his every movement carried the heavy calm of command. "He lives," he said simply, stopping a few paces away. The princess nodded without looking up. "He breathes, but something's changed." The chief crouched beside her, studying the boy's arm where the scar glowed faintly beneath the skin, a slow, rhythmic pulse matching his heartbeat. "The flame mark," the chief murmured. "It's a sign of balance. The wild rejected the curse but left its echo inside him." "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. "It means the forest knows his name now," he replied, "and it will never forget him." The princess turned, eyes narrowing. "Will he be safe?" The chief didn't answer immediately. He looked at the boy's face, so young, so fragile, yet already lined with the stubborn will of someone who had faced death and refused to bow. "Safe?" he repeated at last. "No one who carries the mark of the wild is ever safe. But he will be seen." The boy stirred, his hand twitching. The princess leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Hey!" she whispered softly, her voice almost human in its tenderness. His eyes fluttered open, brown against the deep green light of the forest, and confusion flickered through them before memory returned. "You're alive," he breathed. "You're safe." She smiled faintly. "You keep saying that. It keeps being true," he said, trying to sit up before a sharp pain in his arm stopped him. The chief pressed a massive hand to his shoulder, steady but firm. Rest, he said. You have done enough. The boy blinked up at him, startled by the tone. It wasn't cold or commanding this time, but something like respect. Who are you? Varric, the chief said. Keeper of the Flame, Warden of Talvareth. That's a lot of titles, the boy muttered. Varric's lips twitched, the closest thing to amusement his kind ever showed. You've earned the right to speak them. The other warriors shifted uncomfortably, watching this human boy address their leader with the bluntness of a child who had never been taught fear. Why did you help me? The boy asked. Because she asked me to, Varric said. And because the wild demanded it. The wild demanded? The boy frowned. I don't understand. The princess reached out and took his hand. The beasts here aren't just animals, she explained. They're part of the flame, the living spirit of this world. When you fought one, you touched its heart, and it touched yours. That bond doesn't vanish. The boy's expression faltered. So, I'm part monster now. She shook her head gently. No, you're part Talvareth now. His gaze dropped to his arm, where the faint red mark pulsed like a heartbeat. It feels warm. It will, Varric said. It will keep you alive, but it will also call to you. The wild knows its own. The boy's stomach growled loudly, breaking the solemn air. The princess blinked, startled, and then, for the first time since her fall, she laughed. It was soft but bright, like music breaking through a storm. The alien soldiers exchanged uneasy looks, as if hearing something sacred spoken aloud. You laugh, Varric said, eyebrow raised. I thought your rank forbade such displays. Then strike me down, she said, still smiling faintly. I won't stop. Varric said nothing, but his expression softened for a fleeting moment. The boy has a name? He asked her. She turned back toward the child. You never told me. Liam, he said quietly. My name's Liam. She repeated it once under her breath, the syllable strange and beautiful in her accent. Liam, she said again, louder this time, as if etching it into memory. You have my gratitude. He tried to shrug, though his arm trembled. You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same. Varric's gaze hardened. No, he said. They would not. He rose to his full height, looking out toward the forest. Your world may have forgotten courage, but here it still means something. The boy flushed under his scrutiny. I just didn't want her to die. And so you risked your life, the chief said. That's what courage is. Doing what's right when fear says to run. Is that what you call it? Liam asked softly. Because where I come from, we just call it stupid. The princess chuckled again, shaking her head. Perhaps it's both. By midday, the camp began to move. The wounded were carried, the weapons gathered, and the soldiers melted back into the trees like shadows. Liam tried to stand but stumbled. The princess caught him easily, her arm around his shoulders. I can walk, he insisted. I know, she said. But let me pretend you can't. It'll make the others nervous. Why? Because it means I care, she said simply. And they've forgotten what that looks like. He fell silent at that, too tired to argue. They walked together beneath the vast canopy, the forest alive with whispering winds and shifting colors. Every so often, he glanced up at her armor reflecting green light, her face both fierce and kind, and felt something he couldn't name. Not fear, not awe, but a quiet certainty that whatever had changed in him wasn't a curse. It was a beginning. As dusk settled, the group reached the edge of a vast clearing where ancient stones rose from the moss like the ribs of some long-dead giant. There, Varric stopped and turned to face them. The flame sleeps beneath this ground, he said. Its power feeds the heart of Talvareth. We will rest here until the stars shift. He looked to the princess. Your choice to protect him binds him to us now. The council will not approve. Then let them try to undo it, she replied. He stays with me. Varric inclined his head slightly, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. You sound more like a queen every day. Perhaps, she said, but queens listen to their hearts. Warlords listened to their ghosts. That night, when the fires were lit and the stars shimmered through the canopy, Liam lay awake beneath the alien sky. The faint warmth of the mark pulsed beneath his skin, and the sounds of the forest, once strange and frightening, now felt familiar, almost protective. The princess sat a few paces away, polishing her armor, her profile outlined by the soft orange glow. He wanted to thank her again, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he just watched her for a while. The way her eyes softened when she looked at the flames, the way the light reflected off her crimson skin. She glanced at him suddenly, as if sensing his gaze. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just making sure you're still safe." Her smile this time was faint, almost wistful. "Then perhaps I'm not the only one who saved someone." The days that followed blurred together like a long dream of green and gold. The deeper they traveled into the heart of Talvareth, the more alive the world seemed to become around them. Trees bent gently as the princess passed, their luminous leaves dipping in reverence. The air shimmered with drifting motes of light that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's unseen heartbeat. The forest remembered its saviors, one of royal blood, the other a strange human child carrying the scar of its wild flame. The Varanthi warriors still walked with blades drawn, but even they lowered their heads when the boy limped past. Something about him unsettled them, not because he was dangerous, but because he had survived something no one was meant to. The princess, meanwhile, kept close to him. She told herself it was duty, that his survival was her responsibility, but every time she looked at him, that lie felt thinner. On the 5th day, they reached the ancient sanctum, an open expanse surrounded by pillars carved from stone older than the Varanthi themselves. A shallow pool filled the center, its surface reflecting the twin suns overhead like molten glass. Here, the flame spoke strongest. The princess knelt at its edge, her reflection staring back at her, red skin glowing against the gold water. "This is where my ancestors swore the pact with the wild," she said softly. "It was here they promised to guard its power, never to claim it." Liam stood beside her, his hand brushing the faint scar on his arm. "And now?" he asked. "Now," she said. "It seems the wild has chosen differently." She turned her gaze on him, her eyes glowing faintly. "You shouldn't have been part of this world. Yet the forest marked you. That means something. Maybe it means I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time," he said with a weak grin. Her lips curved, but the sadness didn't leave her eyes. "Perhaps, but wrong places make right legends." Varric approached then, his heavy steps echoing softly. He looked between them, his expression unreadable. "The council has heard of the boy," he said. "They summon us to the citadel." The princess's jaw tightened. "Already? He's still healing." "The wild does not wait, and neither do politicians," Varric replied. "They want proof that the flame mark hasn't cursed him." "And if they decide it has?" Liam asked. Varric met his gaze, the silver in his eyes cold and direct. "Then they will put you to death before the next dawn." The words fell like stones into the pool, rippling through the silence. Liam swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. The princess rose swiftly, placing herself between him and the chief. "Then they'll answer to me," she said. "You forget your rank," Varric warned. "You forget your queen," she snapped back. For a moment, the air between them crackled with heat, old loyalty clashing with new fire. Varric held her stare for a long time, then finally exhaled. "You've learned defiance well from your human," he said. "I hope it serves you as long as it serves him." He turned and walked away, his soldiers following in silent formation. Liam looked up at her, uneasy. "You stood up to your boss for me." "He's not my boss," she said. "He's my father." The revelation hung between them like lightning frozen midair. "Wait, you mean—" "Yes," she said quietly. "Varric is my father, chief of the Varanthi, warden of flame. And you didn't tell me because?" She looked away. "Because humans trust kindness. My people trust strength. I wasn't sure which one you'd see in me." "Both," he said softly. She blinked at him, caught off guard. Both. Yeah, he said with a crooked smile. You can be terrifying and still kind. My mom was like that. Her expression softened. She sounds like a queen. She was just a teacher, he said. But I guess that's close enough. They set out for the citadel at dawn the next day. The journey was long, through valleys where rivers glowed from within and the wind carried the sound of distant singing, though no one could say from where. Liam rode atop a sleek alien beast that moved like smoke, its scales shimmering with iridescent patterns. The princess walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on the creature's flank. You shouldn't come, he said at one point. If your people hate humans, they'll turn on you too. She shook her head. If they do, then they were never my people. Her voice was calm, but the words burned like iron. He didn't argue again. When they finally reached the citadel, it rose like a dream carved into the mountainside. Spires of black crystal reaching toward the suns, walls etched with runes that pulsed like living veins. Inside, the halls were vast and cold, lined with statues of past rulers whose eyes glowed faintly as if watching. The council awaited them in a circular chamber filled with golden light. 12 figures stood in silent judgment, their armor gleaming, their expressions carved from the same stone as the walls. Varric stood among them now, his presence commanding even among equals. You bring a human to the heart of our world, one of the counselors said, her voice sharp as glass. Do you mock our oaths, princess? No, she replied evenly. I honor them. He saved my life. The flame marked him. To destroy him would be to defy the will of the wild itself. The council murmured, unease rippling like wind through dry leaves. And if the mark corrupts? Another asked. If it consumes him, it could spread to us all. Then I will bear it, she said, stepping forward. His fate is mine. The room fell silent. The counselors exchanged glances, uncertain. Varric's expression betrayed nothing, but his eyes flicked briefly toward his daughter. A silent warning or perhaps a plea. Liam stepped forward before he could stop himself. You don't have to protect me, he said, his voice shaking but steady. If I'm a danger, I'll leave. I don't want anyone hurt because of me. You would run? One of the counselors sneered. After saving our heir? I'm not running, he said. I'm just not yours to decide over. The words hit harder than he meant them to. The council fell silent again, and even the princess turned toward him, surprise flickering across her face. Varric stepped forward, his voice low and grave. He speaks like one touched by the wild indeed, he said. Pride and fire in equal measure. He looked down at Liam. If you truly believe your fate is your own, then you must prove it. How? Liam asked. Varric drew his blade and drove it into the floor between them, the runes along its edge flaring alive. You will walk into the Grove of Echoes, Varric said. If the flame accepts you, it will burn away your corruption. If it rejects you, it will consume you completely. The princess's breath caught. Father, that's a death sentence. Varric met her gaze, his voice steady. Or a rebirth. Liam swallowed hard. When do I go? Varric turned his eyes toward the glowing horizon beyond the citadel's windows. When the suns fall, he said. The wild doesn't judge in daylight. That night, as shadows deepened across the alien city, the princess found Liam alone by the balcony overlooking the valley. The twin suns sank beneath the horizon, painting the clouds in blood and gold. You don't have to do this, she said. I think I do, he replied. If I walk away, they'll always see me as the curse that lived. And if you die, then I guess I won't have to worry about what they think. She turned sharply toward him, her eyes glimmering with anger and something else. You talk like my father, she said. Cold. Final. And you, he said gently, talk like someone who's afraid to lose what she just found. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the distant hum of the flame, steady and low. Then she reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the scar on his arm. It's still warm, she whispered. That means something. He smiled faintly. Yeah, he said. It means I've got a chance. Night fell like ink over the world of Talvareth, and the stars burned sharp and cold above the citadel. Beneath their light, the forest stretched endless and dark, whispering with unseen life. The Grove of Echoes lay at its center, an ancient scar in the land where the wild spirit breathed through roots older than memory. No one entered it willingly. Even the Varanthi, who called themselves the Flames Chosen, feared its judgment. Yet as the bells of the citadel tolled thrice, a boy of earth walked alone down its moss-covered path, his heart steady, his breath shallow, his fear buried beneath a stubborn fire. Liam held no weapon now. Varric had forbidden it. You must face the wild with open hands, the chief had said, and with an unguarded soul. The princess had tried to follow him, but the guards stopped her. So now she watched from the edge of the cliff as his small figure vanished beneath the glowing canopy. The grove greeted him in silence. Mist coiled between the roots, thick with the scent of earth and fire. The trees glowed faintly, veins of red light running through their bark like rivers of molten glass. Somewhere in the distance something moved, too slow to be wind, too vast to be seen. Liam stopped in the center of the clearing, where the soil shimmered as though alive. His pulse echoed through the stillness. Okay, he whispered to himself, his voice trembling but determined. You wanted me here, so here I am. His words faded into the mist, and for a moment, nothing answered. Then the ground shuddered. Roots burst from the soil, curling upward like serpents, weaving into the shape of a figure. A woman vast and radiant, her body made of bark and fire, her eyes glowing with the same light that pulsed beneath Liam's scar. When she spoke, her voice was the forest itself. You carry what is not yours, child of man. Liam swallowed hard. I didn't ask for it, he said, but I won't give it back if it means someone else dies. The spirit tilted her head, the motion both alien and oddly graceful. You would defy the will of the wild? If the wild kills the innocent, then yeah, he said. Someone has to. Her form rippled, light flashing through her body like lightning through clouds. Your kind burns everything it touches, she said. Your worlds rot because you take without balance. Why should I spare you? Liam stepped forward, fists clenched. Because I didn't come here to take. I came here to fight for someone who didn't deserve to die. Maybe that's balance. Maybe that's what your world forgot. The silence that followed was deep enough to feel. The spirit's gaze seemed to pierce through him, seeing every thought, every fear. Finally, she spoke again, softer this time. You speak as if you understand loss. He hesitated, then nodded. My mom, he said quietly. She died protecting people she didn't even know. I thought it was stupid at first. But now, I think it was brave. The spirit's expression shifted, sadness, or perhaps memory. Bravery is not the absence of fear, she said. It is love wearing armor. The roots around them pulsed brighter, and Liam felt warmth spreading from his scar, threading through his veins until it reached his heart. Your flame burns small but pure, she said. That is rare among your kind. Tell me, child, what would you do with the wild's gift if I let you live? Liam looked up at her, unflinching. I'd use it to protect them, the ones who still believe in something better. The spirit leaned closer, her face filling his vision. Even if they are not yours? Especially then. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The air grew thick with light, every leaf trembling with unseen power. Then, slowly, the spirit reached forward, her hand hovering over his chest. Then let the wild test your truth. Her palm touched his skin, and the world exploded. Heat and light surged through him, searing, blinding. His body lifted from the ground, the roots spiraling around him like a cocoon of fire. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of power. His memories flashed. His mother's face, Earth's blue sky, the moment he threw himself between the beast and the princess. Her eyes wide with disbelief and something he hadn't understood then. The pain deepened until he thought he would break apart. But beneath it he felt something else, acceptance. The wild wasn't punishing him. It was asking him to endure. When the light faded, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The scar on his arm blazed white, then settled into a faint golden glow. The spirit was gone, but her voice lingered in the wind. The flame chooses balance. Burn but never consume. Guard but never rule. The forest fell silent again. Liam lay there for a while, staring at the canopy above, where the stars shone through the leaves like the eyes of watching gods. Then slowly he rose to his feet. The pain was gone. The mark no longer throbbed. It pulsed gently, warm, alive. When he stepped forward, the ground beneath his feet glowed faintly, as if the wild itself was guiding him home. Back at the citadel, the princess had been pacing for hours. The council had gathered again, their expressions grim. "He should not have gone alone," one of them muttered. "If the grove rejects him, the backlash could reach the city." Varric stood apart, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "If the grove rejects him," he said quietly, "it is not the city that will suffer. It is us." The princess stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" "He carries the flame now," Varric said. "If the wild consumes him, it means we were never its keepers, only its prisoners." His words silenced the room. Then a sudden wind swept through the open doors of the chamber, carrying a faint shimmer of golden light. The counselors turned toward it in disbelief. The air smelled of rain and embers, of life renewed. "He's coming back," the princess whispered, her voice trembling. Moments later, a figure appeared at the edge of the courtyard, walking slowly through the mist. Liam's clothes were torn, his hair tangled, but his eyes shone with a light none of them had ever seen. When he stepped into the glow of the torches, every rune on the citadel's walls flared to life in response. The forest's power recognized him. The princess ran to him before anyone could stop her, falling to her knees beside him. "You're alive," she breathed, her hands trembling as they touched his face. "Barely," he said, managing a crooked grin. "The wild's got a weird way of saying thank you." Varric approached, his gaze sharp but filled with something like pride. "The flame accepted you," he said. "No," Liam corrected softly. "It accepted us." The chief studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then the wild remembers mercy again." He turned to his warriors. "Let it be known, by the will of the flame, this child of man is one of us." The soldiers knelt, their fists striking their chests in salute. The princess looked up at her father, her eyes shining. "He did what even our strongest couldn't." "Perhaps," Varric said. "Or perhaps the wild just needed a reminder of what courage looks like." He looked at the boy again. "You have my respect, Liam of Earth. But remember, respect can be as heavy as any crown." Liam met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll carry it the same way your daughter carries hers, whether I asked for it or not." For the first time, Varric smiled. That night, the citadel celebrated. Fires burned bright along the terraces, and songs filled the air for the first time in years. The princess and Liam stood together at the edge of the balcony, watching the flames dance against the stars. "You changed everything," she said softly. "No," he said. "You did. I just followed your example." She laughed lightly, her hand brushing his. "Then perhaps we both reminded your wild that mercy isn't weakness. Or maybe," he said, looking out at the glowing forest, "it reminded us." Her fingers intertwined with his then, warm and steady, and for a moment, the wild's whisper turned gentle, almost human. Far below, in the grove, the light pulsed once more. Calm, alive, eternal. The flame had found its balance. The years that followed were not years as humans counted them. On Talvareth, seasons unfolded in light and shadow, in the slow breathing of the wild, and in the rhythm of the twin suns crossing the sky. The world changed in quiet, deliberate ways after the night the flame accepted a child from Earth. The forests grew brighter, their bioluminescent veins spreading across the land like lifeblood. Rivers that had once glowed red with war's residue now shimmered gold and clear. Even the citadel changed. Its spires once carved from dark stone now reflected the dawn, as if the wild itself had learned to hope again. And at the heart of this new balance stood three figures bound by a story that the Varanthi would pass down in whispers. The human who carried the wild scar, the princess who defied her kind, and the chief who learned mercy through loss. Liam grew taller, stronger, but never forgot the forest's voice. He trained among the Varanthi warriors, though he never fully belonged. His movements were too quick, his humor too sharp, his heart too open. Yet there was something in him that no alien steel could match. He didn't fight for pride or legacy. He fought because he believed life was worth the effort. The princess, now crowned as Queen Kaelin, ruled with a fierceness that silenced even her father's oldest rivals. Her people, once driven by conquest, learned restoration under her reign. The scars of war healed, not through force, but through patience. And at her side, always unshakably, was Liam, her advisor, her protector, her link to the world that had taught her compassion. Some called him the Flame's Child. Others called him the bridge between worlds. He laughed at both. "I'm just Liam," he would say, "the one who doesn't know when to stay down." Yet even peace carries shadows. The flame was balance incarnate, and for every dawn it brought, night waited to follow. Whispers began in the far colonies. Rumors that the wild's gift had weakened the Varanthi, that a human's touch had tainted their sacred bond. Armies gathered in secret, old warlords thirsting for the kind of power that once devoured worlds. When Varric, aged but unbroken, heard of it, he summoned Liam to his chamber. "You knew this would happen," the chief said, his voice still strong but lined with years. "Hope always invites envy." Liam nodded. "And envy burns faster than hope ever could." "Then what will you do when the fire comes again?" Varric asked. Liam met his gaze steadily. "The same thing I did last time," he said. "Stand where the wild tells me to." The chief studied him for a moment, then smiled, the same fierce, proud smile his daughter carried. Then perhaps the wild chose well after all. The invasion came with the seasons turning. Black ships descended from the clouds like falling stars, their weapons humming with stolen energy. The sky burned gold and red, echoing the forest's ancient glow. The citadel trembled under the first bombardment, its walls cracking, its towers collapsing into fire. Kaelin stood at the gates in full armor, her blade drawn, her crimson hair whipping in the wind. Liam stood beside her, his eyes alight with the same faint gold that marked the flame's gift. "You could have run," she said over the roar of the sky. "You still could." "And miss all this?" he said, grinning despite the smoke. "Not a chance." "You're impossible," she said, though her voice softened with pride. "I learned from the best," he said. Then the armies came, tide after tide of armored invaders sweeping through the forests, cutting down the glowing trees, screaming in alien tongues. The battle raged for days. Liam fought like wildfire, his movements fluid, his strikes guided by something beyond sight. Wherever he stepped, the ground itself seemed to awaken, roots tearing through metal and stone to shield him. Kaelin moved like a storm beside him, her sword singing through the air, her armor glowing with the flame's light. Together they turned the battle's tide again and again, but for every enemy they felled, another came to take its place. On the fourth day, Varric fell, cut down on the citadel steps while holding the line. His final act was to strike his staff into the ground, sending a pulse through the soil that reignited the flame below. The earth itself rose in defiance, and for a moment, the wild screamed its fury through every living thing. When the smoke cleared, the invaders lay broken. The survivors fled to the stars, their machines trailing fire. The forests healed, swallowing their scars, drinking their ruin. But victory came with a price. Liam had taken a blade through his side during the last wave, a wound that even the flame's warmth couldn't close. He collapsed at the edge of the grove of echoes, his blood mingling with the golden light. Kaelin fell to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she pressed them over the wound. "No," she whispered. "Not again." He smiled weakly, reaching up to touch her cheek. "Hey," Don't look like that. I told you I'd stand where the wild needed me. It needs you alive, she said, her voice breaking. It needs you here. It needs you, he corrected softly. You're its heart now. Her tears fell like rain onto his armor, hissing as they touched the warm metal. The wild stirred then, the air shimmering with faint light. The trees leaned closer, their leaves whispering in the old tongue. Liam's mark blazed gold, brighter than ever before. Kaylin shook her head, panic and hope warring in her voice. No, don't you dare, she whispered. Not like your father. I'm not dying, he said. I'm changing. The light engulfed him, wrapping his body in warmth so bright she had to look away. When it faded, his form was gone, replaced by a single ember floating in the air, small, but pulsing with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. The ember drifted toward her hand and settled there, glowing softly against her skin. The flame's whisper filled her mind. He burns where you cannot go. He guards where you cannot see. Kaylin stood slowly, her tears drying on her face. Around her, the forest shimmered, alive, renewed, aware. The war was over. The wild was awake. She looked toward the sky, where dawn was breaking through the clouds, and closed her hand over the ember. You never could stay still, she whispered. A soft warmth pulsed in answer, faint but real. And as she turned toward her rebuilding world, the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, igniting the flame once more. Gold and red, human and alien, forever bound. Generations later, the Varanthi children would gather by the grove and listen to the storytellers speak of the first bridge, the boy of Earth who defied the wild and taught it mercy. They would point to the faint glow that still pulsed beneath the soil and say his name with reverence. Liam of the Flame, the one who burned not to destroy, but to protect. And somewhere in the eternal hum of Talvaritha's heart, a quiet laugh still echoed, warm, human, alive. For the wild had learned at last what humanity had always known, that love, like fire, was never meant to be contained.